Hello, this is Derek Hansen for StrengthPowerSpeed.com, and this is our 15th episode of our Performance Concepts Chat. And I can't believe 15 people wanted to talk to me, so that's pretty impressive. And this talk is very special to me. I'm talking with somebody locally again, and it's a female athlete who, has reached, the top of her sport in Olympic weightlifting. And it didn't really start that way, but it's a very interesting story in terms of what she's been through in, going through and going to a couple of Olympics. And I think she placed fourth in the first one in 2008 and then third in the one in 2012. And now she's found out that the two people above her were disqualified, and still going through all the red tape involved with that, but she should be the gold medalist. Her name is Girard. And just talking to Christine about everything she's gone through being an athlete, and it's not like Olympic weightlifting is this glamorous sport where sponsors are flocking to help you out. So hearing about how she started and all the challenges she had, everything she had to overcome to get to this point is very interesting and very encouraging. She's probably one of the most positive people I've ever met, particularly when it's very easy to be bitter in sport when you may not feel that you're being funded or supported adequately. So we talk about her training, we talk about the coaches involved in her life and who helped her out, and about her technique and how she worked those things out. And what I found very interesting with her is that she seems very introspective and really understands what works for her. And I think that's going to make her a good coach as she moves forward, is this idea that, there are very individual factors that come to play that can be the difference between making somebody good and great. And she seemed to figure that out. And obviously she had some help with some other people, including her husband. And I think it's important for me to point out, I worked with her, but it was after she achieved all this great stuff, and I just helped in more of a rehabilitation capacity. But I'm really glad I had a chance to work with her, even at the end of her career, and she's moved on to bigger things, got a great family, and she's looking at doing more coaching and consulting. She's the best in the world, so why wouldn't you? So I really hope you enjoy this talk. It was just very enjoyable. She speaks very well and very articulate, and I think you'll get something out of her story. So please enjoy our chat with Christine Girard. Okay, Christine, I want to thank you for getting together with me. I haven't seen you for too long. It's been too long since I last saw you, so I'm glad, this was a good reason for us to get together, and I'll come out and visit you some more, just because I know you have a lot of responsibilities out here. But I wanted to kind of talk initially about where you're at right now, in terms of, you were the bronze medalist in 2012, which was awesome. That's a historical thing. But where is it now? What has happened since, in the last year or so?
Yeah, it actually started last summer. They started to do retests on the samples from the drug test they did at 2008 into 2012 Olympics, and they found out that the people that beat me were actually cheating. So my fourth place in Beijing is actually becoming a third place, so I'll actually have a medal from 2008.
Great. And
2012 I should be having the gold medal, so it's still in the process. So right now my result is second. It's just question of days before they change the result and I become first. So on the result right now, I'm officially third in Beijing and second in London, but that London will change. And then the next step will be to give the medals back. So hopefully within the next year or so, because it's been taking forever, I should be having my new medals.
That's awesome. And I assume there's a lot of paperwork involved and legalities to make sure, okay, that's right, and then you move up, and then they go through the next one, and you move up. Is that what's going on pretty much?
Yeah, and there's a lot of steps, and there's a lot of positive cases. So I'm not the only one affected by that. There's a lot of people that are, and unfortunately, my sport is one of the most, where there's the most positive. So my federation is probably in over their head. So it's a long process, and they have to respect the rights of everybody, so they can appeal all decisions, and so it's a long process.
Yeah.
So once everything is done, then they have to remake medals, because obviously the people that have them don't want to give them back, which I'll have to do it with mine. I'll give back my bronze medal to have a gold. So it's a really long process, and I just hear beats and pieces. So I'm just waiting for it to become official. Looking forward to it.
That's great. Yeah.
It will be fun.
I mean, how does that feel? Like okay, you've got, fourth place and the bronze medal, and now after the fact, years later, you're getting the gold. Is it less satisfying? I mean, how are you feeling about it?
Well, I learned it in a lot of steps, right, during the summer, because it was like one case reveal and then another case reveal. So at first I went from bronze to silver, and I'm like, oh, that's fun, like it's just one step higher, that's good. And then I got silver to gold, and then I was like, that's kind of bad, like it's fun, like I'm super happy, I have the best result, like a Canadian in weightlifting, it's like unheard of, so it's pretty amazing. But at the same time, like, I used to think about my medal ceremony as like one of the best time in my life, and now it's like what it could have been,
Yeah.
And my parents were there too. Like, it could have been so much better for them as well, and for everybody there, like all the Canadian in the audience that was there to support me. They should have seen something else, right? So there's a bit of that side that's kind of hard. And then I learned that my fourth place was becoming bronze, and that one I found it really hard to take. I mean, it's amazing that my first Olympic will turn out to be medal results, but at the same time, like the 4 years I had in between were so hard for me. I came back with a fourth place, and it was a failure for everybody, and for myself, it was really hard to take. I was 3 kilos away from the podium, and everybody treated me like I failed, most of them anyways. And then you realize that, oh my God, like those 4 years could have been so much different for me. So that one was a bit harder to accept, I would say. But I mean, who can be mad to have 2 Olympic medals?
Yeah, and if say you got a medal in 2008, would that have, I mean, you'd still want to get a gold in the next one, but would that have changed how you trained or how hard you pushed yourself for the next 4 years? Like,
not really.
No?
But I trained in a carport, not heated, alone.
So you were driven.
I did.
Pardon the pun.
Like it's true. Like I would have had so much more support financially, most likely, because I would have been the first medal from the country. In Beijing, I think the first medal was on day 7 and I was on day 4. So I would have been the first medal for like a couple days. People would have known weightlifting in Canada.
That's
People
true.
would have been
That's true.
happy about this sport, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Nobody can tell what it would have changed,
Yeah.
obviously. So I'm here saying like, oh, it would have changed my life. Who knows, right? Like maybe not. And I don't regret the 4 years I've done. Like they build the person I am now. But I'm curious to know how much it would have affected
Sure,
me.
certainly.
Like it was pretty historical to have a medal in 2012, and I wasn't the first medal. So if I was the first medal of the Olympics 4 years earlier, who knows, right?
Yeah, no, it kind of messes with you, but obviously you have a very positive attitude. I mean, through all of this, so that helps.
Well, I have faith in life, so everything happened for a reason. So now my medals actually means more than just a medal, right? So
Yeah.
it's the symbol of a clean country believing in true sport and putting the effort in that. And it's a good occasion for people to know that our Canadian athletes are regularly tested. There's no way our Olympians will be cheating. There's no way.
Yeah, and we could go into a whole story of like, and when I first met you, you're telling me about, oh, they're testing me now. I went over here, they're testing me here. You're like peeing on demand all the time, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I mean, that's part of it too. All the stuff that you have to go through that maybe somebody in another country doesn't have to go through. And
well, that's what we kind of learned last summer. They're going through for the other reasons. They're testing it to make sure they're just below what they can be, right? Other country chose to put their money into hiding doping. Canada did not, and we have to be proud of that. So I'm hoping that my medals will be that symbol for everybody and an occasion for people to learn that
yes,
Canadian athlete go through a lot of P tests.
And it's also interesting moving forward because, you know, when you get the result, even as a fan or somebody watching, you know, okay, that's gold, silver, bronze. Is that going to be the result in 4 years or in 8 years, or, you know? So it kind of, you know, tarnishes everything in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's the proof that it's possible to be competitive being clean.
Sure.
And a lot of countries don't believe in that. So they need to see it. Like the Russian coaches said, well, we don't know how to train without it. Well, look, I was just a few kilos away and I did it clean. So there's a way to train to get there. So figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
Like they need to learn that it's possible and put their effort into clean sport, right? Like, so I still believe in it.
Good.
But it's for sure a bit hard to discuss.
And I mean, it's definitely a good, you know, marketing approach on your behalf to say, look, this is what I did, this is how I did it, and hopefully people are breaking down your door to find out too. And that's what I want to talk about as we go through the questions here, is how did you become the athlete that you became? And now it's great to say that you're the best in the world, you know, the strongest in the world. Like that's quite a thing to say, and to be able to tell people and stand in front of, say, a classroom of children or kids and say, like, look, this is what I did to become the best in the world, and I did it clean. So I think you're going to be a great ambassador moving forward.
Hopefully. I'll do my best,
okay.
I promise.
Okay, so what I wanted to find out is, when did you start? When did you get into the sport of weightlifting? Because I have kids, and the furthest thing from my mind right now is like, I want them to be weightlifters. I'm sorry, but you know, they like team sports. They want to be involved in soccer or football, basketball, whatever. But how did you start?
So my story is really funny. It's just by luck, honestly. I was living in Ontario and my family moved. I was fairly young, and my parents wanted us to start a sport to make friends. And my sister, when we were in Elliott Lake in Ontario, she met a girl that was on the junior team for weightlifting, and she just wanted to do like her. So my sister was like, I want to do weightlifting. And my dad was like, no, we want you to have friends. Like, come on. So it took a bit of convincing from my sister part, but my dad was like, okay, you'll try it. So we got there, and I went just to follow. I'm the baby of the family. I always followed everywhere. So I went there, and then 3 older guys were training in this small gym, and that's how we started. So it really, my sister started, and I was there and watching her and like being impressed. And a few months later, I asked the coach if he would take me on. So he said yes, and I was so shy, and so like he made me lift like a wooden stick for like months because he didn't know what to do with me. So that's how I started.
Okay. And but were you having a good time? Was it something that you were like, okay, this is interesting, or what were your impressions?
Well, it's I was so young, I was 9, right? So it was just like I was happy to be like my big sister and do like my big sister. And
so you owe a lot to her.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely from her. But it was different, and it was hard, and I was so shy when I was young. It was terrible. So for me, it was like a way of getting out there without having too much people around, and doing something out of my comfort zone without being too seen, if I can say.
Yeah.
So I really start loving the sport really soon, and it's also a sport that's really easy to see that you improve, right? Because it's numbers.
You're constantly being measured.
Exactly. So, and it's really easy to see that one week I cannot snatch 15 kilos and the next week I can. So I did something right in that week, right? So I got used to that that measurement and that seeing that I was getting better and better. So because I started young, and because I love that challenge, because it's mental and physical, and it's really easy to see that you are progressing. So I really just love that little process of getting better a little bit every time.
And is that something that you found? Like, I assume you had some pretty good coaches, and did you find like, I'm making progress, from week to week or month to month, like you could see it tangibly?
It's funny because you said I had good coach.
Yeah,
My first
that's an assumption I made.
My first coach was an alcoholic, so he wasn't there really often. So when he wasn't showing up, it was the other athlete in the club that were telling us what to do. So we basically learned by watching other people do it. And then when my dad saw that we were really hooked to the sport, he went back to see older athletes that were retired in my city.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, can you come and coach? Because like there's nobody to help them.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they love this.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up having coaches. So no, I wasn't like well taken care of as soon as I started. But so I forgot the last part of the question, but no, I didn't have a good coach.
That pretty much answered it, but yeah, I could just see your dad like inviting the coaches in. Here, take a breathalyzer, please, before you start coaching. Did you do any other sports? Like I know a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't specialize early. And were you playing any other sports when you were young?
Well, my family always have been pretty active, so we were active. And I played volleyball for a few years in high school, so I can have friends, I guess. At one point I had to choose because I was training like 5 times in weightlifting, and volleyball had to go up to 4 or 5, I can't remember. And I'm like, okay, in high school I don't think I can handle like 10 trainings a week. So eventually I had to choose because it was too much in my schedule.
Sure.
But I loved volleyball.
Okay, so you could have been a hell of a volleyball player. Who knows?
Well, right? I don't really have a physique for volleyball players. I think I did the good decision there.
Now, I always like talking about genetics and how that plays into things. And if you go back into your family history, were your parents and their parents, were they athletic or were they strong? Were they like moving boulders when they were younger?
Well, there's a lot of stories of strong people in my family on my dad's side.
That's great.
So like, it's all stories, so I don't know, but they've been mentioned a lot of times. So, they say in French, Girard se fait fort, so it's like my family name. They're strong usually. Yeah. But nobody did that as a sport or any. Okay. Like it wasn't like they were working on a farm and like yeah. So my grandpa had like a lot of interesting story, like trying to lift a trailer so my dad could change the tire when he had a flat. So things like that.
So like some real good examples of functional strength.
Exactly, like laying on the back and pushing with his legs so my dad could change the tire. So I have a lot of little stories like that. I don't know how much are true, but I don't know how much I guess it played a role, but yeah. No one did sport professionally in my family before me. Okay.
Well, I mean, that wasn't one of my questions, but now that you're a parent, what are your thoughts on what your kids will do? Do you have any? Have you and Walter talked about that?
We haven't, but I mean, you're in our gym in our backyard. Yeah. Obviously, my kids come here really often. They see us lift or they see people lift, and they get a dowel and they do it on their own. So I want my kids to be active. I don't want them necessarily to do Olympic lifting. Yeah. But I mean, we take them out and we let them play a lot, and we want them to be active. They will have to pick a sport. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be ours. Okay. That's my vision.
But I mean, what'll probably happen the same with my kids. It's just by association and seeing it, they'll want to do it. And I think that's probably the best way, is just letting them see and observe, and then they make the choice. Yep. Right. Rather than you like, okay, you're going to be clean and jerking by the time you're 4. So.
No, it's really not my style. But I definitely want them to be moving well. To know, like I coach so many adult that they still don't know how to jump at 30, so I want my kids to learn that when it's time to learn it. So but yeah, they'll pick their sport.
And in your own career, was there somebody that said, hey, you're good, or was it you that just found out like, hey, I can really be good at this is something that I can have a future in? When was that point, or was there somebody that pointed that out for you? Because I started so young, I became good for my age really soon, because there's nobody that was doing that at my age. So I remember being 11 years old and having a coach saying like, oh my God, she can do that already, like she'll be good. Wow. But I was 11, right? Like there just wasn't a lot of girls in Quebec doing that. So I started to be good soon. But it's only like much later, like in 2000, that I was like, okay,
I will do the Olympics one day, and I will, like, it's really later that I decided that this would be my path. So.
And when did you start really getting into international competitions where you're like, okay, you're good enough, you're going to be on the Canadian team? When did that start? And when you got exposure to other women lifting and going, oh, okay, that's what they're doing. When did that happen, really?
When I was 16 is the first time I did the World Junior. It was in Greece, and it was my first big comp. So that's when I really realized that it's something to be good in Canada. It's something else to be good worldwide in our sport like us, right? Because in Canada, it's not a sport really well known, but in other countries, it's their national sport. Like, it's a religion, weightlifting, for some countries, right? Yeah. And to face that in an international competition was a bit shocking, because I wasn't expecting it. And to see what other people could do, it was really impressive. So, my first was a big one. It showed me a lot of things, and I learned a lot too, because I remember someone on the team was focusing on other country and being like, oh, that country isn't clean, or this country is clean. And I remember it was my first international, and I made the promise to myself to never care about it. Like, other country, they breed weightlifting, and it's like we do hockey, right? And they do it their way, but it doesn't change how I can do it and how I can get better. So my first meet internationally was, for me, the first time I made peace with it right away. I was like, okay, this is happening, but I'm not spending energy on this. I just want to be better for myself, and it's an individual sport, so let's see what I can do. The first one was really meaningful for me.
Well, it's pretty ironic considering how everything worked out.
Yeah, I know. It's funny.
We're going to talk a bit about like the sports system, and you can filter your comments a bit, or you can just rip right into it. What kind of support did you have? Like, in terms of, obviously you had family support, maybe you had club support, but when you got to the point where you're competing internationally, was there a lot of government support, or from the federation?
In Quebec, there's quite a bit of money invested in sport, so I started to have financial support quite early in Quebec. Okay. I had sponsored from my town when I got a bit later. So I was able to financially make it work. So that was great. When I moved from Quebec to here, that was another story. So the federal does give money, but it's really not a lot. Yeah. So I lost a lot of money when I moved from Quebec to BC. And that was a bit harder, because I didn't have as much services. Like, in Quebec, I could have physio massage, and I didn't have to worry about it because it was covered through that financial support. Here, it was a bit harder. Okay. But I was lucky because I got on the podium. But our federation is really small, so I was really left alone to deal with that. So they're like, oh, there you go, you have money, and make it happen, So it was a bit hard to figure it out at first, because you're like, okay, I can use money for massage and physio, and then what I do, like, it was. I had 5 different coaches from 2008 to 2012. So, wow. And I ended up doing my program myself. So I ended up taking control over pretty much everything in my life. So that money allowed me to do it, to be able to put the time in it and make it work. But in terms of systems that can help me, like I said, I trained in a carport. I was my own coach. I bought myself an iPad so I can analyze my technique. So there's still a lot that can improve, mostly for small sport like mine. Yeah. Because our federation had no money.
Having gone through that process, though, and having to be relatively self-sufficient, does that give you knowledge moving forward in terms of you being a coach and knowing what should be a part of that system?
Definitely. I don't, like, I would never have coached like I'm coaching now if I didn't go through those 4 years, right? So I took control over my diet. So I read books, and I figure out a way so I could do it. And now when I coach, I have that knowledge that comes with me, right? So I worked with a sport psychologist for many, many years, and I have that knowledge that comes with me. So everything, when I coach, I think I'm a more complete coach because of what I've went through.
Sure.
And because I took control over my own things as an athlete, so it's easier to transpose to someone else,
yes.
right? So because I already have done it, I know how it feels. I know. so I'm definitely coaching differently now, thanks to those 4 years.
Yeah, and I hate to go back to this concept, but I mean, do you feel that the fact that you trained in difficult conditions, like you're training in a cold garage, can you draw anything from that? And like maybe you don't want to pamper athletes too much. Explain that to me. What do you think you got from that, just being in a difficult situation?
Well, I think the main thing is it's good for motivation for my athletes, because often they're like, well, I don't want to train if like nobody looks at me, or like, and I'm like, hey, come on, like weightlifting is a sport that you do for yourself, like a lot of sport, but this one you do it for you. And I have my history that comes with it, right? Like I can tell them, like, you don't need people to watch you all the time to become good. So it really helps, I think, my way of seeing the sport and carrying that over the athletes. Like, it's not a sport that you can do with only external motivation. You need something inside, and you need to dig to get it if you don't have it right away, yes. Right? So I think in that point, that really helped me.
What I wanted to get into now was, we talked about your evolution, as an athlete and the difficult stuff you went through. Can you talk specifically about the training and your philosophy? And it maybe it's an evolution too. This is how I trained before you had 5 different coaches, and this is what you took from it. But maybe as you were preparing for 2012, what was the training philosophy there, and what might be different than maybe what the other athletes are doing, aside from the fact that you're clean? But what else? What did you see? You're like, okay, this is really working for me, and this is what's setting me apart.
Well, one thing that was good and bad for me is that I have 5 different coaches in 4 years, but I had like 15 in my whole career. 15-ish.
Oh, wow.
Something like I had a lot.
Yeah.
But I took something from all of them, right? So I had more knowledge every time I had a new coach. So I got at the end of my career, and I had a pretty good idea of what was working and what wasn't working. I had some coach that had programmed stuff for me that was just not going to happen, and other coaches that were like right on. So I could just modify that. From 2008 to 2012, I did not gain strength almost.
Okay.
All I gained there was technical. I gained speed. I worked a lot on the technique, and I gained a bit of strength, but almost nothing. So the big difference is, after changing coach so often, I ended up taking care of myself and having people to help me. So instead of having one coach controlling my training, I had different coaches that were helping me controlling my stuff. So I was making my program, and I had another athlete, Jeannie Lassen, who was overlooking my program. So I was making it, sending it to her, and she was like, okay, this is good. Oh, did you think about that? So with her, we became really creative to find things that would really change how my technique was working at that point. So like, I wished I learned proper technique when I started, but I didn't. So the last 4 years, I had to figure it out and see how much I can change and how much I can gain. And I think it's that vision of just being creative and testing things on myself and being like, okay, this I know works, this I know I have to get better. What can I do with this, right? So like, I trained more with elastics. I was doing more, like I created new exercise that I don't know if other people do it or not. I just made it up and it worked for me. So it's that vision of like always trying something and being honest enough to say, okay, this was shit and this was good. So, it's to be able to do that. And I think that what's made me a bit different. In the sport of weightlifting, unfortunately, there's a lot of old coach that still coach like they learned to do it 30 years ago. It might not be accurate, right? So I think trying new things was what made me different.
And was there something unique about I mean, your technique to fit your makeup or your strengths? Did you look at other lifters as part of this process? Did you go like, okay, I want to do the lift like them, or was it entirely unique to yourself?
I really tailored it to myself for a different reason because, like I said earlier, the first time I did international comp, I promised myself not to look at others. Like, I don't know why they're good, right? Like, I can't say it's because of their technique.
Yeah.
So I really focus on myself. That being said, I remember being at the Worlds later in my career and being like, oh my God, I want to lift like her, because she was really good, right? And she was from a clean country, I could tell.
Okay.
So I still had models, but it was later in life and it wasn't where I focused my time.
Okay.
So it was really like slowing down my videos with Jeannie next to me and just pinpoint everything that could be more efficient. It's physiques, right? So if you can understand a bit of physics, you can understand the lift and how to make it better for yourself.
Okay.
So, and technique can change depending of your body type and like if you have long legs, short legs, like whatever. So it can be pretty complex. So I kept it really focused on myself.
And in your own work as a coach now, are you taking that and transferring it and going, okay, that's specific individual has these qualities or has this limb length or posture, and you're able to do that with other athletes now?
Yeah, I actually based my program out of it, mostly for beginners. I had a junior team for a while, and we had programs that I called, like, one was like the flamingo program with like skinny long legs and not strong, and one was the bear program with like strong but not really flexible people. So I know it's funny, but
that's awesome. I want to see those programs now.
So I tailored, like, obviously I didn't have 20, but I had like a few that could be a bit more adjusted to the athlete as soon as they started, and I still use that now. And for the technique, then it's a more one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So yes, I do tailor the program, and it's not because something worked on me that will work on other people, and I know that. And when my athletes are high enough that they can understand that, then I can start to do tests on them as well. So sometimes I'll be like, hey, I haven't tested that on myself, but I think it will really help you. Do you want to try it for the next few weeks, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm still testing things out.
That's great.
Which I think every coach should be doing. So I can adjust to every athlete as much as I can.
Yeah, well, I think one time I'd love to be able to come out here and just watch you coach and just see the interaction between you and the athlete and the differences between maybe this athlete and that athlete. That would be pretty fascinating, because I think everybody has their own sort of biosignature. Like, everybody's a little different, like a fingerprint or a snowflake or whatever you want to call it. But how you address their individual needs is probably the best part of coaching, would you say?
Well, I think it's the fun part of coaching, right? To adjust to, like, I will never coach a guy like I coach a girl, and I won't coach all the girls the same way. Some I have to kick in the butt, and some I have to pet in the back. Like, it's an image, but it's really what happens in training. Yeah. And in individual sport like that, when they call the name of the athlete have to go on the platform and they have 1 minute to make the lift. My job is to make sure that when they call that name, that athlete is ready to stand up and do the lift, no matter where she's coming from or he's coming from. So adjusting to the athlete is the challenging part, but it's also the fun part for me.
And I'm going to just go with that. When you go to a competition and you're with an athlete, what is your job then? Like, is it technician, or is it psychologist, or all of those things? Like, how do you approach that?
There's a lot of strategy. So it's a lot of timing. We have to make sure, because the warm-up have to be timed with the competition in the front. It depends of everybody lifting. So if someone get injured and they don't lift, and you have less time, so you have to adjust constantly.
Yes.
The warm-up. So that's a big part. The other part is the psychology. A bit of technical, but not a lot, because that's not the time to work. It's the time to be awesome. That's what I tell my athletes. So lately, because of my kids, I've been doing mostly the mental part, so I can come and go if I need to. Yep. With the kids. But coaching in Olympic lifting, it's not an easy task, and but it's super fun.
Well, I can relate. I remember I was helping out some mixed martial arts fighters, and you go to the fights, and then they have like 12 fights lined up, and you're like, okay, you're 10th, and then you're wondering, okay, well, I guess we have about, I don't know, an hour, and then like the first 3 guys get knocked out in the first 30 seconds, right? And you're like, oh geez, we have less time. So I'm sure it's like that too.
Yeah, definitely. So. It sounds the same. Yeah. And for weightlifting too, it's like they can go out there and miss their first attempt. They come in the back. They have 2 minutes to do it again. They have 2 minutes to forget about this and build their confidence enough to go back and do it. So, and depending on the athlete, some will do it on their own really easily. Yeah. Some will come back with tears in their eyes, and I'm like, okay, we got to do this, right? So, I mean, every sport has their little things, but competing in weightlifting, it's a lot harder than what people see, because people are just there and like,
they just see the lift.
Yeah, it's going up easy. Yeah. But everybody that tried to snatch and clean and jerk will know otherwise, and if you do it in front of people, it's something else too.
I'm sure you have some good competition stories, but we'll cover that at another time. If we go back to like this time in 2008 Olympics and how you prepared, how the competition went, and then how things went from 2008 to 2012 in terms of how you prepared. And we touched on that in the beginning, but can we talk a bit about that, like, you know, the lead up to 2008 and what your expectations were, and then how, you know, the result, and then how you might have changed things, and obviously there were coaching changes along the way, but can we talk a bit about your Olympic experiences?
Yeah, Beijing was good. I was in a solid place, like I was stable in my life. I had the same coach for like 5 years straight, and everything was pretty good. I got ready with my sport psychologist, and I felt really ready for this, even though it was my first Olympic. It was really impressive because it was the Chinese putting it up. So everything was really, really impressive. But I managed to keep my calm, and I succeeded on all my snatches. So I did 3-on-3, which is pretty good for international. I was really happy. I equaled my best there. For the clean and jerk, it didn't go as well. I made the first one and I missed the other 2. So the clean and jerk, I did technical error that I shouldn't have done, but I don't think it was a big part of training or mental, like it just something that happened when it shouldn't happen. So it was hard to take, like I mentioned after. And I changed the way I trained after according to that. I did more clean and jerk together, which I did a bit less before 2008. But the 4 years between 2008 and 2012, I can't just talk about my training because my life changed completely in those 4 years. I finished my university degree to be a math teacher in high school. I moved from Quebec to BC. I changed my club, I changed coaches, I changed how I eat, I changed like everything. So those years were all about adapting to change. And I think that's how I got better for 2012 too. Because as an athlete, that's your job, to adapt and just keep going. So for 2012, I was much more happier and more complete as a person. I had different coaches that were helping me with different things. I was in control and I was in a happy place. That being said, I injured my shoulder 1 week before London, which was quite a challenge for me. I don't know if you want me to get into that.
Hey, let's talk about it. Yeah, let's hear this.
So 7 days before I competed in in London, I injured my shoulder in training. I just caught a snatch wrong, and I couldn't raise my arm without pain, and I freaked out. And I remember my husband being like giving me time because he knows me. So it took me a bit of time to overcome that, but for that whole week the only thing I could do was jumping. I couldn't like I did a bit of weight, but it was like 40% of what I can actually lift, and it was like mentally it was really, really hard. So the day of my comp, it actually I think helped me to be better the day of my comp, because I decided that the only thing I can do is the best with what I have, right? Which was an injured shoulder, but the perfect team around me. So I had a physio that was part of the Canada team that was helping me and helped me a lot. I had Walter, my husband, who was also coaching me. I have my competition coach that was there for the strategy, and I have Jeannie Lawson that was in the back there too, just to support me. So I was happy no matter what, and I just did my best with what I had. I didn't do my best comp ever. I was shaky with a bar overhead, which never happened before. That was because of my injury.
Sure.
But it worked. So I think the biggest difference, it's not that much in my training itself. I think it's a lot about my surrounding from 2008 to 2012. 2012, I was surrounded by people that truly believed in me and that were invested in my career as much as me. 2008 was a bit different.
But I just find it interesting that you had these changes, obviously, and you, like you said, you adapted, and then that injury, that there's so many different variables that could have went different ways. And now we're sitting here talking, and you're going to be getting a gold medal. Like that's a pretty good story. And you were,
that's why I wrote a book about it.
That's what I want to talk about. So you're now writing a book about that. And how was that process for you?
Actually, I'm done the writing part, so we're editing now.
Okay.
So it was really fun. It was really emotional. And my book is not about weightlifting. It's not about just being an athlete. It's about being pushed down and standing up and keep walking, and make it happen for yourself. So my book is really my story from 2008 to 2012. So it's more like a true story. It's not a biography, like where I'm born and whatever. Like it's not that. It's really just
how many drunk coaches you've had.
Yeah. Okay. It's really just going through what I've been through, and that story turned out to be a gold medal, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of interesting. So those 4 years were really interesting to me, and hopefully it will be meaningful for other people that will read my book.
That's great. And when do you think that'll be available, released?
Probably early next year, because we'll do the translation as well. So
okay.
We'll take a bit more time to get both ready at the same time. So probably early next year.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure we touch base, and we'll have another talk, and you can talk specifically about the book a little more in depth. But that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that. I'll probably read the English one. But so you won the medal in 2012. We know that even worked out better. What has happened since 2012 in terms of your life? Like what changes have you made, and what new things are you doing?
Well, I have 2 kids.
That's major. That's major.
After 2012, I kept training. I healed my shoulder, and then I had a knee injury where you come in and you saved me after a surgery that did not work. So, and as you helped me got better, I got pregnant.
Yeah, I don't know if I had any help with that, but that was a great thing to be sort of around at that time.
Yeah, so it was fun. I kept training through my pregnancy until we figured out that I wasn't allowed to lift more than 30 pounds. I still remember the phone call. You're not allowed to lift 30 pounds. I'm like, oh, I've squat 300 yesterday.
We're missing a zero or a decimal there.
Yeah. So I had to cut down on training. I came back to competing after my son was born, but I remember he was 5 months old, and I did the snatch, and I ran in the back to breastfeed and then come back to do the clean and jerk and miss some of the warm up. And I was like, I'm having fun, but I don't want to put my kids through that. Like I decided that my job was to become a mom, and I was happy with that. So I let go a bit of my athlete side, and I focused on being a mom, and we had a second child. So now I'm trying to get back in shape, and throughout that time I kept coaching, which I really love doing. So that's what's new in my life.
And I know, even just talking about all that you've been through and all the adjustments you made to your own training, I'm pretty excited to see what you do with athletes as a coach moving forward. And is that something that you want to really dive into once? I mean, obviously you have your children and you want to make sure that works, but is that something you're looking at? I mean, we're sitting in your backyard in a gym, which is, I'll take some photos and we'll put them up. But what do you want to do?
Well, I love coaching, not necessarily because I want my athletes to be the best, but because I want them to become a better person. Like weightlifting saved me. Like I said, I was so shy. I was completely pretty alone when I was young, and weightlifting helped me gain confidence in myself and and grew stronger in a lot of different ways. And that's what I want to see in athletes. So I don't want athletes that are just good. I want athletes that need weightlifting. And if that brings me to the Olympics, then I'll be there. But it's not my first objective. It's really just to be there for people that wants to lift, and that can gain a lot from weightlifting, and to see the change, it's pretty amazing.
And I know you've gone around and helped out some different gyms and different coaches, and some of these gyms are CrossFit gyms, and there's a lot of people who are like, oh, CrossFit people don't do this right, or they're crazy and all that. But what has been your experience? Because obviously if they want you to come there and help, then they're very forward thinking in terms of like, we got to improve our technique and our programming. How's it been for you?
Well, it's actually, I find it really fun to work with CrossFitters because they are really driven, most of them. And obviously if they come to my clinic, it's because they want to learn. What I make sure to tell them is, because CrossFit, the way I see it, is a lot of what they do, they don't think when they do it. Like, you don't think when you do that kind of workout, because like you'll stop if you start thinking. But when you do Olympic lifting, you have to take time to think about your technique.
Yeah.
So when they come for me to my clinic for one day, the only thing they have to do is think about their technique. I don't want them to PR that day. If it happened, it happens, but we want to focus on technique. And then I tell them that they need to keep that in their workout. They need to be balanced. And if you just do snatch only for time, you'll never get better technically, and then the weight won't get better. So it's I really try to calm them down a little bit and have some kind of training that they have time to think about their technique and maintain that gain that they have with me that day. But yeah, CrossFitters are really driven people, and they're fun to work with.
And those technical messages are getting through? Like, do you find that they are...
Yeah, there's a few gyms that I go every few months, so that's really cool because I did like a clinic, and then every few months I can update what they're doing. So obviously there's some gain and then some things that they forget. So to be able to maintain it through times, it's pretty amazing to see how much better they get. So it's really fun. It's I really enjoy.
That's great. I mean, that's you're like the CrossFit whisperer, right? You can come in
just
and
for the Olympic lift, though. Like, the gymnastic, don't ask me.
But that's great. And you have your own club. What the name of your club is? Kilophile. And when we publish this broadcast, this interview, we're going to put up some. You have a website and all that. So I think people will want to get in touch with you and learn more from you. And I'm excited for what you're going to do in the future. So. Well,
I'll try to spread my knowledge
as
much as I can.
You have to. You have too much. You've been through so much that I think it's just. Everybody should hear about, what advice you have moving forward.
Well, I really appreciate you helping me spreading that
around. We'll get the good word out. And we'll follow up with you maybe in the fall and talk a little bit more about your book and let people know when that's going to be released.
For sure.
Awesome.
That'll be fun.
Thanks for your time, Christy.
My pleasure.
So the great thing about our talk is you got to hear a bit about Christine's career, how she got started, what she feels are the important points that brought her to this culmination into world's best in 2012. And it's a great story. And the great thing is you'll be able to get her book, read about it in more detail. And I'm sure she has we had some great stories off camera that were really quite interesting, and I'm sure we're going to visit with her soon, maybe in a number of months. Hopefully she has her gold medal by then. We can see it, we can touch it. She'll have her book ready for publishing, and we can get into some of these more detailed, interesting stories that she kind of hinted at as we finished our interview out at her place. So if you have any comments or feedback, we'll be posting some contact information for Christine so you can get in touch with her. But also you can comment on Facebook at Strength Power Speed, and also on Twitter, Strength Power Speed, no vowels for both of those, and also on our YouTube channel. So again, great time talking with Christine, and thank you very much. And you'll hear from us soon at strengthpowerspeed.com. Thank you.